Everyone having a right to a safe and stable home benefits us all.
Queen Camilla thought she was untouchable. She thought wrong. For years, she's been the puppet master, controlling King Charles, making secret decisions, building her empire. But Prince William just exposed everything.
I think the one I enjoyed reading more than anything else was Harry Potter.
And what did he do next? Absolutely brutal. And Camilla, she's facing consequences she never saw coming. What William discovered will change the monarchy forever. Royal insiders are calling it the biggest power shift in decades. You need to see this before the palace takes it down. When King Charles finally ascended to the throne in September 2022, after decades of waiting, many observers expected a smooth transition. After all, he had spent his entire life preparing for this role, but the reality turned out to be more complicated than anyone anticipated. According to multiple reports from royal authors and palace insiders, the relationship between Charles and his eldest son, Prince William, has become increasingly complex, marked by what sources describe as underlying tension and competing approaches to royal duties. The year 2024 proved to be particularly challenging for the family. In February, Buckingham Palace announced that Charles had been diagnosed with cancer following a routine procedure. Just weeks later in March, Princess Catherine revealed through a heartfelt video message that she too had received a cancer diagnosis. For William, these back-to-back health crises created what he later described as the hardest year of his life. During an appearance on the Apple TV series The Reluctant Traveller, William spoke with unexpected openness about the emotional toll. He explained that while he felt capable of handling his royal duties, the worry and stress around family matters overwhelmed him quite a bit. According to royal author Robert Jobson, who documented these events in his book The Windsor Legacy, William was shaken to the core by the dual diagnoses. The prince found himself in an impossible position, trying to support both his father and his wife, while also taking on increased royal responsibilities and caring for his 3 young children. Sources close to the family reported that William approached his father during this difficult period with a request to reduce his official engagements for the remainder of 2024, hoping to focus more on family. But according to Jobson's reporting, Charles declined this request, essentially telling his son to think again. This decision highlighted a fundamental difference in how father and son approach their roles. Multiple palace insiders have noted that Charles is a workaholic who believes strongly in maintaining a visible and active presence. During his recent tour of Australia, observers were struck by the amount of work he accomplished, even temporarily stopping his cancer treatments to fulfill the commitment. William, by contrast, has been vocal about prioritizing family life and creating stability for his children. He has spoken repeatedly about the importance of giving children a happy, healthy, and stable home, suggesting that without this foundation, you are setting them up for difficulties later in life. Royal experts have pointed out that these different approaches sometimes bring father and son into competition with one another. According to sources who spoke to various media outlets, Charles has wanted to be monarch for decades, and despite his health challenges, he is determined to be a successful and dynamic leader. At the same time, William is quietly preparing behind the scenes for when his own time comes. One palace insider told reporters that it has become a sensitive topic within the family, noting that while there is no rift between them, there are personal and competitive tensions that occasionally surface. The relationship between William and his stepmother, Queen Camilla, adds another layer of complexity to these dynamics. Camilla has been described by multiple sources as a wise counsel to Charles, someone who has influenced his decision-making in significant ways. Royal commentator Jenny Bond noted that Camilla's voice could be heard clearly in certain palace statements, particularly those dealing with sensitive matters. When Charles made the decision to strip Prince Andrew of his remaining titles and honours, the statement included a line about their majesties expressing sympathy with victims and survivors of abuse, using the plural form that suggested Camilla was standing shoulder to shoulder with the king in the decision. Some observers have suggested that Camilla has grown increasingly influential as Charles has dealt with his health issues. Reports indicate she has been getting directly involved in important decisions about the present and future of the institution, and her presence at official meetings shows that her role has evolved beyond the purely symbolic. According to sources close to the palace, Camilla is one of the people closest to the king, especially since his diagnosis. And she has great influence over him. An article published in mid-2025 noted that Camilla has been filling space in the royal structure and has more control over the royal agenda and greater weight in decision-making than ever before. However, the relationship between William and Camilla has reportedly always been tense. Royal author Christopher Anderson told media outlets that William merely tolerates his stepmother, who has always been a little afraid of him. The author described how Camilla allegedly needed a gin and tonic after her first meeting with William, suggesting the encounter was particularly stressful for her. This tension has roots that go back years. Both William and his brother Harry distrusted Camilla because of their devotion to their late mother, Princess Diana, and they never felt comfortable opening up to her in any meaningful way. According to one source, the brothers' distrust grew when they discovered Camilla was leaking stories to the press to make herself look better. In August 2025, a former royal photographer named Ian Pelham Turner made headlines by claiming that Camilla had expressed concerns to Charles about William trying to create issues within the monarchy. According to Turner, Camilla felt that William was positioning himself as the driving force behind the throne, and she had told Charles to put a stop to it. Turner suggested that Charles should be the one leading the monarchy during his reign, not his son. These claims, while not officially confirmed, reflect the speculation that has swirled around the family dynamics, particularly as Charles's health situation has raised questions about the future. Other tensions between father and son have been documented in various reports. According to royal author Robert Jobson, Charles remains upset about William flying his entire family together in a helicopter in 2024, violating an unwritten rule that heirs should not travel together due to safety concerns. The king even tried to get a senior aide to obtain William's written acknowledgement of the risks, which William refused to provide. Charles was also reportedly annoyed when William arrived late to the coronation because he was filming social media content, and the king has been frustrated that his son refuses to wear a kilt during visits to Scotland despite repeated requests. These disagreements, while they may seem minor on the surface, point to larger differences in how the two men see the monarchy's future. Sources have noted that Charles and William are supporting their individual causes in quite different ways, and this sometimes brings them into competition with one another. However, palace insiders have been quick to emphasize that despite these tensions, there is no actual rift between them. One source told reporters that there seems to be an attempt to manufacture division, when in reality no such rift exists, adding that their relationship is as strong as ever and they are aligned in their work with many areas of shared interest, royal. Expert Carolyn Harris, a Toronto-based historian, has noted that the pace of transition between Charles and William seems to be happening faster than might typically be expected. She pointed out that the kinds of transitional activities usually associated with the final decade of a monarch's reign are happening quite quickly during Charles's time on the throne. This is partly due to his age and health situation, which has created a sense that his reign may be a period of transition between the long reign of his mother, Queen Elizabeth, and the future reign of his son. William has been candid about the pressures he faces. In addition to calling 2024 his hardest year, he has spoken about how worry and stress related to family matters can be overwhelming in ways that his royal duties are not. He explained that when challenges involve family and personal feelings, they upset the rhythm of life in ways that are particularly difficult to manage. These comments reveal a prince who is deeply concerned about protecting his family while also preparing for the enormous responsibility that lies ahead of him. As these various dynamics play out behind palace walls, the public continues to see a carefully managed image of unity and continuity. But the reality, according to those who follow the royal family closely, is that the balance of power and influence is shifting in ways that will shape the monarchy for generations to come. The question that remains is how these personal relationships and competing visions will ultimately resolve themselves, and what kind of institution will emerge when William eventually takes his place as king. For most of his life, Charles had been defined by waiting. He spent 7 decades as heir to the throne, longer than any other person in British history. During those years, he developed a reputation for being thoughtful, intellectual, and passionate about causes ranging from environmental conservation to organic farming and urban architecture. Those who knew him described a man who was deeply curious, who listened carefully, and who had strong convictions about how the world should be. But he was also known for something else, a certain gentleness that some mistook for weakness. According to various biographical accounts and psychological profiles, Charles had struggled with confidence throughout his life. He reportedly had a difficult relationship with his parents as a child and felt neglected, which contributed to what observers described as emotional reserve and sensitivity to criticism. He spoke publicly about experiencing anxiety and depression, challenges that were made more difficult by his high-profile role in the royal family. Royal experts and those who worked with him noted that he tended to avoid conflict and seek compromise, sometimes to the point where decisive action became difficult. Yet this same man had also shown remarkable determination in other ways. Despite being destined for a career in waiting, he had not simply sat around. He founded the Prince's Trust in 1976, which went on to help tens of thousands of disadvantaged young people start their own businesses. He championed environmental causes decades before climate change became a mainstream concern. He spoke out on issues he cared about, even when it meant controversy. The so-called Black Spider memos, named after his distinctive handwriting, revealed how he had privately lobbied government ministers on various topics, from architecture to agriculture to climate policy. When Charles finally became king in September 2022, the transition brought complexities that went beyond the ceremonial aspects of his new role. According to reports from palace staff and royal observers, everyone in the royal household had to adjust to his relentless pace of work. His curiosity, which had always been one of his defining traits, was not passive. He wanted to be involved, to understand, to contribute. This was notably different from his mother's approach, which had been described as more relaxed and measured. Queen Elizabeth had spent 70 years establishing a particular style of monarchy centered on continuity, duty, and careful political neutrality. Charles inherited that framework, but he also brought his own perspective, shaped by decades of thinking about what the monarchy should be. The early months of his reign coincided with the dual health crises that would define 2024. His own cancer diagnosis came in February, followed shortly by Catherine's announcement in March. These events created enormous pressure on the family, and particularly on William, but they also seem to have prompted something in Charles. According to royal authors who have documented this period, including Robert Jobson, Charles was determined not to let his illness derail his vision for his reign. He maintained an active schedule, even temporarily pausing his cancer treatments to fulfill commitments like the tour of Australia. But there was another dynamic at play during this time, one that was less visible to the public, but nonetheless significant. For years, Camilla had been described by sources as a wise counsel to her husband, someone whose influence on his decision-making should not be underestimated. She had survived decades of public scrutiny and hostility related to her relationship with Charles during his marriage to Diana. Through persistence and patience, she had eventually won a degree of acceptance and had been by Charles's side as he navigated his long wait to become king. Multiple sources suggested that she had taught Charles how to be more human, helping to smooth rough edges and making him more comfortable in public situations. However, some observers began to notice subtle shifts in how decisions were being made after Charles became king. According to reports that emerged in 2025, there were instances where Charles seemed to be pulling away from the collaborative decision-making process that had characterized his relationship with Camilla. Former royal photographer Ian Pelham-Turner told media outlets that he believed Camilla had grown concerned about what she perceived as attempts by William to position himself more prominently, and that she had urged Charles to address this. But whether Charles acted on such advice became less certain. Royal author Robert Jobson documented several specific instances where father and son clashed over matters both significant and seemingly trivial. Charles was reportedly still upset about William flying his entire family together in a helicopter, violating an unwritten safety rule about heirs traveling together. He had even tried to get William to provide written acknowledgement of the risks, which William refused to do. Charles was annoyed when William arrived late to the coronation because of filming social media content. He was frustrated that William refused to wear a kilt in Scotland despite repeated requests. These disagreements, while they might seem minor, pointed to a larger reality. Charles was trying to assert his authority as king, but he was finding that his son was not always willing to simply follow instructions. According to sources who spoke to various media outlets, the dynamic between Charles and his senior advisors also began to evolve. In November 2024, reports indicated that Charles would often leave tough work issues to be raised with William by senior aides rather than addressing them directly himself. This suggested a recognition on Charles's part that traditional channels of authority were not working as smoothly as he might have hoped. But it also suggested something else, that Charles was choosing his battles, deciding when to engage directly and when to step back. Multiple palace insiders emphasized that despite these tensions, there was no actual rift between Charles and William. As one source told reporters, the relationship was as strong as ever. They were aligned in their work and united in their vision for the royal family. But strong relationships can still contain complicated dynamics. Another source noted that while Charles and William generally work well together, there is underlying tension over their different work ethics and views on tradition. Charles is described as someone who happily consults William and largely trusts him to do what is right. But trust and agreement are not always the same thing. What emerged from these various accounts was a picture of a king trying to find his footing in a role he had waited his entire life to fulfill. Charles had spent decades thinking about what kind of monarch he wanted to be, what causes he wanted to champion, what changes he wanted to make. But the reality of actually being king turned out to be more complicated than the long years of preparation might have suggested. He found himself caught between competing pressures, between his own instincts and the advice of those around him, between the need to establish his authority and the practical reality that his time as monarch might be limited by his age and health. Leadership experts who analysed Charles's approach noted that he had shown both strengths and vulnerabilities in his new role. He had been visible during a time of personal grief, meeting people, talking with them, being seen. This visibility sent an important signal of continuity and stability. He had also been clear about his values, emphasizing duty, service, and inclusivity in ways that echoed his mother while also reflecting his own priorities. But he was also navigating the difficult task of establishing his independence while dealing with serious health challenges and managing complex family dynamics. According to those who worked in the royal household, Charles's intellectual curiosity and work ethic were driving forces that shaped how the monarchy operated under his leadership. Staff members had to adjust to a king who wanted to be deeply involved in details, who asked questions, who brought his own ideas to discussions. This was markedly different from the approach many of them had become accustomed to under Queen Elizabeth. Some adjustments were simply procedural, the natural transition from one monarch to another. But others reflected something deeper, a shift in how power and influence were distributed within the palace walls. What became clear was that Charles, despite his gentleness and his history of seeking compromise, was capable of making independent decisions when he felt it was necessary. The question was whether these decisions would align with the advice he was receiving from those closest to him, or whether he would chart his own course. According to various reports, Charles had begun to assert himself in ways that suggested he was choosing the latter option more often. He was, in the words of one analyst, finally being king rather than simply wearing the crown. And that meant making choices that were his own, even if they were difficult, even if they created tension, even if they went against the counsel of people who loved him and wanted to help him succeed. The palace, as always, maintained its public face of unity and continuity. But those who understood how to read the subtle signs, the meeting invitations that shifted, the decisions that moved forward without certain consultations, the quiet pulling away in private conversations, could see that something fundamental was changing. Charles was establishing boundaries, finding his own voice, determining which advice to accept and which to politely set aside. He was, after 7 decades of preparation, finally exercising the authority that came with the crown. And in doing so, he was creating space for questions about what would come next and who would ultimately shape the future of the institution he now led. William had always been a careful observer. While his father spent decades waiting for the crown and his stepmother worked behind the scenes to shape decisions, William watched and learned. He understood the dynamics at play within the palace walls better than most people realized. He had grown up in this world, seen its pressures destroy his mother, witnessed his father's struggles, and experienced firsthand what it meant to be under constant scrutiny. But unlike previous generations, William had the advantage of perspective. He could see not just what the monarchy was, but what it needed to become. The events of 2024 created circumstances that accelerated a transition that might otherwise have taken years or even decades. When both his father and wife received cancer diagnoses within weeks of each other, William found himself thrust into a position he had been preparing for his entire life, but perhaps sooner than anyone expected. According to royal author Robert Jobson, William was shaken to the core by these dual health crises. The prince had to balance supporting his wife through her treatment, helping his 3 young children understand what was happening, maintaining his own composure and stepping up to represent the crown at a time when both the King and the Princess of Wales were stepping back from public duties. By March 2025, reports indicated that William had significantly expanded his public engagements and ceremonial responsibilities. He was taking on front-facing roles that had traditionally been reserved for the monarch himself. He presided over investiture ceremonies at Windsor Castle, met with heads of state, and participated in high-profile public engagements on behalf of his father. Royal aides told reporters that this increased visibility was intended to maintain continuity and public confidence while the king reduced his schedule during cancer treatment. But those who understood palace dynamics recognized that something more significant was happening than simple delegation of duties. William had begun attending meetings that he previously would have left to his father. Not all of them, but the important ones. According to sources familiar with palace operations, he started offering input where before he might have remained silent. His suggestions were thoughtful and carefully considered, framed in ways that supported his father rather than challenged him. But they were also clear and definitive, the voice of someone who understood power and was no longer content to simply wait for it. Royal commentator Hilary Fordwich told media outlets that William was determined to modernize the monarchy and that much of what was happening behind the scenes was critical to molding the monarchy's future image to ensure it remained relevant. The strategic nature of William's approach became evident in how he positioned himself. He was not staging a coup or creating confrontation. Instead, he was methodically building relationships with key advisors who would one day serve him as king. He was weighing in on matters that affected the family's public image. He was, as multiple sources described it, preparing behind the scenes for when his time would come. One palace insider told reporters that it had become a sensitive topic, noting that while there was no rift between father and son, there were personal and competitive tensions that occasionally surfaced. In May 2024, Charles officially handed over the role of Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps to William during a ceremony at the Army Aviation Centre. The transition was symbolic in more ways than the ceremony itself suggested. Royal historian Carolyn Harris noted that the kinds of transitional activities usually associated with the final decade of a monarch's reign were happening quite quickly during Charles's time on the throne. The pace of these changes reflected both Charles's age and health situation, creating a sense that his reign would be a period of transition between his mother's long rule and his son's future one. By late 2024 and into 2025, William had begun to articulate more clearly his vision for what the monarchy should be. During an appearance on the Apple TV series The Reluctant Traveller, he spoke with unexpected openness about his desire for change. He told host Eugene Levy that he enjoyed change and didn't fear it, explaining that he wanted to question whether the monarchy was still having the most impact it could be having. He spoke about not wanting history to become a weight and an anchor, about the importance of living for the here and now. Royal biographer Sally Bedell-Smith called it a savvy move, suggesting that by choosing a Canadian comedian as his interviewer, William was signaling that he wanted to break out of the conventional mold. William explained his approach in terms that suggested a fundamental rethinking of what royal duty meant. He said he was trying to do it differently, trying to do it for his generation. He described it as doing things with a smaller R in royal, focusing more on impact, philanthropy, collaboration, and helping people rather than the traditional pomp and protocol. Sources told reporters that William had done a lot of thinking about what kind of king he wanted to be and how he wished to reform certain traditions. Rather than ribbon-cutting ceremonies, he wanted to focus on raising money for local communities and creating real change. This vision did not always sit comfortably with everyone in the royal establishment. According to reports that emerged in October 2025, some royal advisors had grown concerned about William's plans. Sources indicated that senior aides believed William was moving too fast and too freely, warning that he needed to be careful about his revolutionary ideas. The advisors argued that the monarchy's strength lay in its visibility and ritual, and that being monarch was a lifelong commitment that demanded duty always come first. But William seemed undeterred by such warnings, continuing to chart his own course. King Charles himself had reportedly taken some umbrage over William's focus on family. According to royal expert Hilary Fordwich, the king would have preferred his oldest son to concentrate on building a legacy as a global statesman. But William had made clear that his priorities were different. He had publicly stated that family was the most important thing in his life, and that creating a stable home environment for his children was essential. This emphasis on family over duty represented a significant departure from how previous generations had approached the role. The practical impact of William's growing influence became visible in various ways. In late 2025, it was announced that starting in spring 2026, William and Catherine would have the authority to grant royal warrants to individuals or companies who provided preferred products or services to the royal family. This was a significant expansion of their responsibilities and reflected their growing status within the institution. William also attended the COP30 World Leaders Summit in Brazil on his father's behalf, representing the Crown, at a major international gathering focused on climate change. Royal commentators noted that William had increased his workload substantially from 2024 to 2025, conducting 202 official engagements compared to just 139 the previous year. While this was still less than some other working royals, including his 81-year-old cousin, the Duke of Gloucester, who carried out 212 engagements, it represented a clear commitment to taking on more responsibility. The fact that he was doing this while also supporting his wife through cancer treatment and prioritizing time with his children made the increase even more significant. Those who worked closely with William described a prince who had developed confidence and clarity about his role. Royal expert Richard Fitzwilliams noted that William had laid down markers early on for his approach, prioritizing privacy for his family while also demonstrating a willingness to engage with the public in new ways. The choice to settle his family at Adelaide Cottage in Windsor rather than at a more traditional royal residence like Buckingham Palace reflected his different vision for how future monarchs might live and operate. By late 2025, the shift in dynamics had become unmistakable to those who understood how to read the signs. William was not just the heir in waiting. He had become, as one astrologer put it, more than a king in waiting, pretty much a virtual king. Decisions that once would have gone through multiple channels and required the king's explicit approval were now being handled through William's office. His vision was shaping outcomes. His priorities were setting the agenda for what would come next. The relationship between father and son during this transition remained complex. Royal author Robert Jobson reported that while there was underlying tension between them over work ethics and views on tradition, they generally worked well together. The king happily consulted William and largely trusted him to do what was right. But trust and consultation were not the same as shared control. William was establishing his own authority, making his own decisions, building his own team. And Charles, whether by choice or by necessity, was allowing it to happen. For William, this was not about ambition in the traditional sense. Multiple sources emphasized that he took the responsibilities of his future role very seriously. He understood that the monarchy's survival depended on its ability to adapt and remain relevant. He knew that his approval ratings and public image would shape whether the institution could continue into the next generation. And he was determined to ensure that when his time came, the transition would be smooth and the monarchy would be positioned for long-term stability. The palace absorbed these changes with the efficiency of an institution that had survived for centuries by adapting to new circumstances. Some doors closed, others opened, and life continued in the shadow of the crown. But those who understood royal history recognized that they were witnessing something significant. A transfer of influence and authority that was happening not through dramatic confrontation, but through quiet, steady, strategic positioning. The future had stopped asking for permission. It was already here, already shaping decisions, already determining the direction the monarchy would take. And at the center of that future stood William, no longer simply waiting his turn, but actively preparing the ground for what would come next. The relationship between William and Camilla had always been complicated. Their first meeting back in 1998 set the tone for years to come. According to royal author Christopher Anderson, when the then 17-year-old William met his father's companion at Clarence House during a break from Eton, Camilla was trembling like a leaf. She was so anxious about the encounter that she needed a gin and tonic immediately afterward. The reason for her nervousness was understandable. She was meeting the son of the woman whose marriage she had helped to destroy, a fact that both she and William were acutely aware of. For William and his brother Harry, Camilla was the other woman, the person they held responsible for their parents' painful and very public divorce. Royal experts have documented that both brothers pleaded with their father not to marry her. In his memoir Spare, Harry revealed that he and William urged Charles not to go ahead with the wedding, but their father proceeded anyway. According to sources who spoke to various media outlets, William and Harry had always distrusted Camilla and felt resentment toward her because of their devotion to their mother. They never felt comfortable opening up to her in any real way, and their distrust reportedly grew when they discovered she had been leaking stories to the press to make herself look better. Over the years, the relationship evolved from open hostility to something more complex. Royal author Tom Quinn claimed in his book that as teenagers, William and Harry had referred to Camilla using harsh nicknames including Lady Macbeth, Cruella de Vil, and the Witch of the West. But by the time Charles and Camilla married in 2005, William had learned to put on what Anderson described as a good front publicly, even if privately he remained uncomfortable with the situation. According to multiple sources, Camilla was shrewd enough not to try to instruct William in any way, maintaining a careful distance that allowed their relationship to remain civil, if not warm. The dynamic shifted somewhat after Harry left the royal family in 2020. Sources told reporters that the Sussex drama actually brought William and Camilla closer together, as both were dealing with family tension they did not want. William and Catherine did not want any extra drama or tension in the family, having enough of that with Harry and Meghan. It was reportedly Catherine who helped warm William to his stepmother, never being dismissive of Camilla and always treating her with kindness. A family friend told media outlets that William had warmed up to Camilla over time and that they had developed a familial relationship. But familial did not mean equal. Despite any improvements in their personal relationship, the fundamental power dynamics were clear. William was the heir to the throne. Camilla, regardless of her title or influence with Charles, was someone who had married into the family. According to reports that surfaced in November 2024, this distinction became increasingly important as William began to assert himself more prominently. Sources indicated that Camilla wanted Charles to hold on to power for as long as possible because she loved her responsibilities and had wanted to be queen her whole life. She did not want to let it go quickly, but what Camilla wanted and what would actually happen were two different things. The tension came to a head in various ways throughout 2024 and 2025. In August 2025, former royal year, photographer Ian Pelham Turner told The Mirror that he believed Camilla had seen William trying to create issues within the monarchy and had told Charles to put a stop to it. Turner suggested that there were rumours William was positioning himself as the driving force behind the throne, and that Camilla felt Charles should be the one leading during his reign. But by this point, such concerns seemed to be coming too late. William had already begun to assert his authority in ways that could not be easily reversed. One of the most visible signs came when he removed Camilla's sister, Annabel Elliot, from the Duchy of Cornwall payroll. Elliot had served as an interior designer for nearly 2 decades, but once William took control of the duchy, sources confirmed he would no longer employ her. The Telegraph reported that there was no reflection on her work, but the message was clear. William was making his own decisions about who would be part of his operation, and family connections to his stepmother were not going to be a deciding factor. Reports also emerged of tensions between Camilla and Catherine during official events. In September 2025, sources told various outlets that there had been an uncomfortable moment during President Trump's state visit where Camilla had dismissed Catherine after she escorted First Lady Melania Trump to greet the Queen. The incident was described as uncalled for and raised William's hackles significantly. According to insiders, the way Camilla behaved in front of everyone, pushing Catherine away and snapping, tested William's relationship with his stepmother. A source explained that while his relationship with Camilla had evolved since the difficult early years, the fact that she was now disrespecting his wife was putting it to the test again in a big way. By late 2025, the palace had begun to reorganize itself around new realities. Staff members who had worked there for decades understood what was happening, even if it was never explicitly stated. Decisions that once would have gone through Camilla's office were now being handled differently. William's team was taking the lead on matters that affected the future direction of the family. According to sources familiar with palace operations, advisors who once consulted with the Queen Consort on various issues were now more likely to seek William's input instead. Royal expert Joe Little told reporters that when William eventually becomes king, he will be the primary decision-maker for the entire institution. Every aspect of Camilla's public and private life would be reviewed, and it would be up to William to determine what role, if any, she would play going forward. Christopher Anderson noted that Camilla's role in the monarchy may be re-evaluated entirely, though she would probably still participate in some royal engagements here and there. But the key word was probably, suggesting that nothing was guaranteed. Charles himself seemed to recognize what was happening. According to various reports, he had come to trust William's judgment on many matters, even if it meant stepping back from the collaborative decision-making that had characterized his relationship with Camilla. The king happily consulted his son and largely trusted him to do what was right, even when that meant allowing William to chart a different course than Charles might have chosen himself. For Camilla, the shift represented a loss of influence that must have been difficult to accept. She had spent decades working to establish her position within the royal family, surviving public hostility and scandal to eventually become Queen Consort. She had developed relationships with key advisors, understood the inner workings of the institution, and had learned how to navigate its complex politics. But all of that experience and all of that hard-won acceptance meant little in the face of one simple fact. She was not in the line of succession. When Charles was gone, her position would depend entirely on the goodwill of her stepson, a man who, according to multiple sources, merely tolerated her and who had always been a little afraid of, according to royal experts. The palace as an institution adapted to these changes with the efficiency born of centuries of experience. Flags continued to fly at the same height. Ceremonies proceeded as scheduled. To the outside world, everything looked stable and continuous. But those who understood the subtle language of royal protocol could see the shifts happening. The guest lists that changed. The seating arrangements at official functions have quietly evolved. The way certain matters were handled through different channels than they had been just months before. Charles appeared to have made peace with the transition. Multiple sources noted that while he had wanted to be monarch for decades and was determined to be successful despite his health challenges, he also recognized that his son was ready. The conversation on the terrace between father and son, where Charles acknowledged that William was ready and William simply replied that he knew, marked a moment of understanding between them. The waiting was over, not because Charles was stepping aside, but because the future had already begun to assert itself. As for who truly won in this quiet reshuffling of power, the answer depended on how one defined victory. Charles had finally achieved the role he had waited a lifetime for, even if circumstances meant he would likely have less time to leave his mark than his mother had. Camilla had survived to become Queen Consort, even if her influence was now waning and her future role remained uncertain. William had positioned himself as the clear center of power for what would come next, ensuring a smooth transition when his time arrived. But perhaps the real winner, as it had been throughout centuries of royal history, was the institution itself. The monarchy had faced questions about its relevance, weathered family scandals, and dealt with health crises that affected its top members. Yet it had adapted, shifted resources, and reorganized power structures to ensure its continued survival. It sensed instability and corrected course by elevating the strongest option, the one with the longest timeline ahead, the one most likely to ensure continuity for the next generation. The palace would continue to function regardless of which individuals held which titles. Staff would adjust to new leadership. Protocols would evolve to meet new circumstances. The institution would persist because that is what institutions do when they have survived for more than 1,000 years. They outlast individuals. They adapt to changing times. They ensure their own continuation above all else. Camilla would one day become Queen Dowager, a title that had not been used in over a century and a half. She would retain certain privileges and status, but her actual influence would be up to William to determine. She might continue with charity work and occasional public appearances, or she might retreat to her private home at Raymill House, the place where she had always felt most comfortable away from the spotlight. The choice would not entirely be hers to make. The story of power within the palace was never really about the individuals who wielded it. It was about the machine that kept running, the system that perpetuated itself, the ancient institution that valued survival above sentiment. In that machine, William had become the essential component, not because he had staged a rebellion or confronted his father or demanded recognition, but because he had understood how the system worked and had positioned himself exactly where the institution needed him to be. The transfer of power was complete, not because it had been announced, but because everyone who mattered already understood it had happened. And in the end, that was all that was required.